Chapter 162. Distorted Space. Lin Qier and others were running up the stairs when they suddenly stopped mid-climb. Chao Yuan asked confusedly, "What's wrong? Why stop?" Lin Qier stared blankly at the scene before them, hesitating for a moment before stepping aside to reveal half the space behind him. The others could clearly see ahead. "What the?" Li Shaoguang exclaimed, eyes wide with disbelief. Typically, stairs spiral upward, gradually climbing higher floors. After running up one flight, they should reach the second-floor hallway, entering Building 2. However, after everyone ran up one flight, what appeared before them was not the second-floor hallway but a dormitory room. Yes, after climbing the final step, they found themselves facing a completely ordinary two-person bedroom. The room was neat and tidy with bedding, pillows and cushions arranged neatly. From the skincare products and clothes on the desk, it seemed these two girls had lived here for a long time. However, in this clean dormitory room, there wasn't a single shadow. This strange scene was like someone deliberately built the stairs to lead directly in front of this bedroom door. As soon as you climb up, you have to pass through this bedroom. Could the design of the female dormitory be like this? Some people wondered aloud. They were all male soldiers and had never been to Building 3, so they didn't know what it looked like inside. Impossible. Lin Qier knelt down, lightly rubbing his hand against the spot where the stairs met the bedroom wall. The two kinds of tiles collided perfectly, forming such a smooth joint that even the construction madmen of the training camp couldn't achieve this level of craftsmanship. It's as if someone took two separate places and pieced them together. Is this also related to space? Chao Yuan furrowed his brow. Right, in this building, there must be a mysterious entity skilled in spatial manipulation. Lin Qier said confidently, "If I'm not mistaken, the internal layout of this building has become completely disordered, like a shuffled Rubik's Cube." He stood up and walked straight into the bedroom, pushing open the door on the other side. Outside the door, it wasn't a balcony but a T-shaped corridor. It was T-shaped because it was formed by two originally connected corridors that had been misaligned and spliced together. Chao Yuan went to the window, unable to see anything outside. Still just deep blue everywhere. He pushed the window hard, but it didn't move at all. That's the power of mysteries. Too weird. Some new recruits couldn't help but exclaim. Due to the T-intersection, two opposite paths appeared ahead. The group hesitated at the fork. Which way leads upstairs? Li Shaoguang scratched his head, suggesting maybe we should split up? This isn't wise in a building with mysterious entities. Lin Qier shook his head, continuing, "The left path leads to another dormitory. Behind that dormitory is the bathroom, and behind that is a staircase going down. While the right path goes through two consecutive dormitories and then appears a staircase going up." "Can you sense the path?" Li Shaoguan asked curiously. "I can, but there are range limitations. I can only sense a few rooms." Lin Qier calmly said. "Should we go right then?" "No." Lin Qier shook his head, pointing to the wall in front of him, slowly opening his mouth. "This wall behind us is actually several flights of stairs leading up, allowing us to reach the fourth floor directly." Just when they entered Building 3, he noticed that while his spiritual perception couldn't penetrate from outside, within the building he could normally use it. This means that from the outside, Building 3 looks like a space-isolated individual, while from the inside, each room is simply misplaced and doesn't exist in terms of space isolation. This means the walls inside these buildings are all breakable. Break through this wall? Yes, but be careful not to damage the structural integrity of the building. Although space is distorted, it doesn't mean the load-bearing pillars have lost their effect. Once significant damage to the structure occurs, this place might collapse. Lin Qier seriously warned. A young man stepped forward, revealing a grayish glow on his palm. "Hand it over." He heavily slapped his palm on the surface of the wall, and the grayish glow instantly covered the wall. After a moment, it corroded out a circular hole large enough for 3 people to pass through simultaneously, without damaging any other structural components. The group entered the circular tunnel in order, with Lin Qier and others at the front. Just as they were halfway through, a sudden anomaly occurred. The surrounding rooms and walls suddenly moved automatically. The direct path from the T-intersection disappeared, replaced by a bedroom. The staircases behind the walls which led up were misaligned like rotating Rubik's Cubes, moved to unknown locations. At the same time, Lin Qier and Chao Yuan et al., who had just entered the first section of the stairs, felt the surroundings change. The left and right walls, which were previously intact, became two empty bedrooms. The stairs in front became walls and the back hallway turned into a staircase going down. What's happening? Li Xiaoguan exclaimed in surprise. Space has distorted again. Lin Chia furrowed his brow, thinking deeply. Why? Is it because our actions of breaking through the wall caused space distortion, or does it change every few times? Chao Yuan looked around helplessly, sighing. We've separated from the others. There's no choice. Who knows what the layout inside will change next? Li Xiaoguan shrugged. Anyway, let's stay together from now on and don't stray too far apart. Lin Chia spoke calmly. If the mysterious entity hiding in Building 3 can only do this much, although it's inconvenient, it's not a major threat. Its forbidden cave is more focused on trapping enemies rather than having killing power. Right, as long as enough people enter Building 3, breaking through here is just a matter of time. Chao Yuan also realized this, nodding in agreement. Now the question is, if the mysterious entity can only do this much, what happened to that scream just now? Lin Chia thought for a moment, shaking his head. Now that we think about it, there's no decisive evidence and reasoning is ultimately just reasoning. Lin Chia continued walking forward, along with Chao Yuan and the others, passing through countless rooms that had been spliced together. They walked for about 5 minutes before stopping in front of a door. Chapter 163. The Headless Man. What's going on? Chao Yuan asked suspiciously when he saw Lin Chia stop. Lin Chia didn't say anything, he just gently pushed open the door of the room. Outside the door was a narrow walkway, and in the center of the walkway lay a body that had been cut at the waist. It was a woman's body. The upper half of the body was completely separated from the lower half. Crimson blood stained the surrounding ground, vaguely recognizable in the pool of blood. She was wearing the uniform of a new recruit. It's one of ours. Li Xiaoguang's voice is a little hoarse. I know her, good-looking. Before I have a comrade who also said that he would chase her. I didn't expect to. This is what they found today, the second body. Lin Chia walked over to the pool of blood and swept her body inch by inch with his spiritual power and spoke in a deep voice. There is only this one wound on the body at the waist. The section is very smooth. It should be chopped off by some kind of sharp weapon with a single blow. The muscles of the upper limbs remain stiff. The atmosphere at that time should be very tense. She was on guard against something, or he was confronting something. However, the person who confronted her. No, the mysterious strength of the confrontation should be far above her, and only used a knife to chop off half of her body, so that she did not have the slightest ability to resist. The face of Li Xiaoguang on the side was very ugly. Wasn't it said that the mystery was good at trapping enemies? How could the strength be so strong? Chao Yuan pondered for a moment. Could it be that that mystery had used a forbidden ruin involving space to directly split her body? No, if it's a space type of power, the break shouldn't be like this. This kind of wound can only be cut out with a weapon. Could it be that that mystery is also good at sword techniques? Lin Chia's brows furrowed slightly. His gaze fell to the end of the dim walkway and he slowly opened his mouth. Or perhaps there is a second mysterious existence here. Hearing these words, the two people behind them thumped in their hearts. Second mystery? Li Xiaoguang exclaimed. To be able to kill a pool realm existence so crisply, then wouldn't it have to be a Chuan realm as well? Counting the one that controls the space, there are 2 Chuan realm mysteries in these 3 buildings? Lin Chia nodded. There was this possibility, but he couldn't jump to conclusions yet. The 3 of them fell silent. If it was in the outside world and 2 Chuan realm mysteries appeared, it shouldn't be too difficult for the 200 or so recruits to solve them, but if it was in a single building like this that was completely blocked off, the concept would be completely different. Here, counting the more than 50 female recruits that were originally supposed to live here and the male recruits that they had just entered, there were only about 80 people, so it wasn't like they didn't have a chance of winning if they took on the 2 mysteries head-on, but now they had completely fallen into each other's rhythms, and not only did they have no idea of each other's location or their specific abilities, but they were even being manipulated by this space willfully, and each of them was dispersing away from each other. Timing, location, and people, none of them were on their side. Their chances of winning were too small. Right at this moment, Chao Yuan suddenly raised his head and after frowning for a moment he asked suspiciously, "Did you guys hear any sounds?" Sound? It was that kind of sound, the sound of a heavy object being dragged on the ground. 3 people quiet down again, and sure enough, there really is a vague dragging sound from the distance, followed by the door of the room was opened, the sound of closing. Times dash. The sound seemed to be getting closer and closer to them, and the sound of opening and closing the door of the room was getting clearer and clearer. A moment later, Lin Chia's spiritual perception seemed to have detected something. His face suddenly changed, his hands gently placed on the hilt of the sword at his waist, his brows filled with concentration. 7 nights, what did you see? Chao Yuan sensed Lin Chia's abnormality and asked. It's coming. Lin Chia's voice was a bit heavy. It was the mysterious one that killed this female soldier. Li Shaoguang's face was cloudy. Do we fight or run? Try its ability first and kill it when you have the chance. The situation now, the more it drags on, the more unfavorable it is for us. Lin Chia said calmly. He was telling the truth. Right now everyone was separated by the misplaced space and scattered in all directions. If anyone else encountered this Chuan realm mystery, there was basically no way to live. The longer they dragged it out, the fewer survivors there would be. Now there was him here as well as Chao Yuan. Li Shaoguang's strength wasn't top-notch, but it was still in the middle of the pack. The 3 of them teamed up, and it wasn't like they didn't have the power to fight in the face of the Chuan realm's mystery. Hearing Lin Chia's reply, Li Shaoguang nodded and took the machete behind his back in his hand, a high level of battle spirit emerging in his eyes. Although they hadn't spent much time together, Li Shaoguang was already convinced of Lin Chia, and since Lin Chia said he wanted to fight, he naturally wouldn't have a problem with it. On the other hand, Chao Yuan, who was on the side, just silently clutched the sheath of his sword in his arms, ready to pull it out at any time. Creak dash. As the sound of dragging got closer and closer, eventually the door in front of the corridor where the 3 of them were located was opened, and a nearly 2-meter-tall figure slowly burrowed out from behind the door, dragging something in the back with one hand, while closing the door of the room with the other. Through the dark blue dim light from the window, Li Shaoguang and Chao Yuan finally saw the true face of this thing. It was an extremely burly man with a huge bloody hole in his neck. His head was already gone, his bare skin appeared grayish-white under the dark light, and one of his hands was adorned behind him, dragging an exaggeratedly shaped decapitating large knife. This knife is about 3 meters long. The body is basalt color, heavy and incomparable. By this headless man dragging on the ground, the back of the knife hard in the ground on the marble tiles dragged out deep grooves. Headless man, decapitation knife, that stout body in the shroud of dark light, slowly approaching in the corridor, bringing an inexplicable sense of oppression. What the hell? Li Shaoguang was a little nervous in his heart and he couldn't help but open his mouth and spit out. He walked too slowly according to this speed. It is completely... Just in the instant his voice echoed in the corridor, the headless man dragging the decapitation knife violently stamped his foot on the ground, no longer advancing slowly like before. His body shape swept out furiously at a speed that the naked eye could not capture at all. Like a shark that had smelled blood, he showed his killing intent. As the marble floor crumbled and splashed, the headless man's figure arrived in front of Li Shaoguang in an instant. Li Shaoguang's pupils suddenly contracted. Immediately after, a piercing cold light flashed in front of his eyes, and by the time Li Shaoguang reacted, the headless man's figure had already traveled to his back. Blood gushed out from his waist. Then he only felt a blackness in front of his eyes and he couldn't see anything anymore. Seeing Li Shaoguang die in front of his eyes, Chao Yuan's pupils shrank and he reached out to grasp the hilt of the knife in his arms. But just then, Lin Chia grabbed his wrist and put his other hand in front of his mouth, making a silencing gesture to him. Chapter 164. The Strongest and the Weakest. Seeing Lin Chia's action, Chao Yuan took a deep breath and slowly removed his hand from beside the hilt of his sword. After that headless man cut Li Shaoguang at the waist, he didn't mean to continue attacking Lin Chia and the 2 of them, but instead stood still, his body slightly sideways towards the direction where the 2 of them stood, dragging his decapitation blade as if he was thinking. At the same time, a touch of extreme darkness spread through Lin Chia's body, enveloping Chao Yuan as well, and in this darkness, the sound of the 2 of them's heartbeats was consciously blocked by Lin Chia, making it impossible for it to spread beyond the darkness. Seemingly confirming that there were no sounds coming from around them, the headless man turned his body around, dragging his exaggeratedly shaped decapitation blade as he continued to slowly move towards the front. Seeing the headless man's figure move farther and farther away, Lin Chia was about to let out a sigh of relief when suddenly, the surrounding space was once again disorganized. The surroundings changed one after another, and when everything stabilized, the corridor in front of the 2 of them had turned into a dormitory, and the headless man's figure had even disappeared. Lin Chia put away the darkness god ruin and released his grip on Chao Yuan's arm. Chao Yuan saw that the crisis was lifted and let out a long sigh of relief. Li Shaoguang. Don't worry, he's not dead. Lin Chia seemed to know what Chao Yuan wanted to say and said with a smile. Not dead. Chao Yuan froze, but he was clearly stabbed by that man. It's just a blindfold. Lin Chia shook his head. The moment the knife was about to slash Li Shaoguang, my spiritual power sensed the sudden appearance of two people's auras that instantly moved away from Li Shaoguang, while at the same time replicating an extremely simulated Li Shaoguang flesh that was cut in two by a single slash. If I'm not mistaken, these are the instructor's tactics. Chao Yuan seemed to have thought of something. Are you saying that the body we saw in the cafeteria earlier as well as the female corpse in the corridor just now were all fakes? Yes, I didn't see it at first, and if it wasn't for that momentary exchange just now, I wouldn't have been able to realize this. Chao Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. The scene of Li Shaoguang being instantly cut off at the waist reappeared in his mind, and his brows furrowed slightly again. That mysterious is too fast and its moves are very harsh. If we fight head-on, we are no match at all. That's right, but his weakness is also obvious. Sound. After the scene just now, Chao Yuan had also noticed something strange about this mystery. It seemed to only attack objects that made sounds within its range. The reason why Li Shaoguang was cut at the waist was because of a word spoken in front of it. Right, but this probably can't be said to be a weakness. It should be considered a trigger mechanism. Lin Chia pondered for a moment and continued. Perhaps its own speed isn't very fast, but it is able to keenly capture sound sources that exist nearby, and then use its own abilities to move over at a speed that borders on shifting. No, that doesn't seem to explain why the speed of its blade was so fast. Could it be that? Lin Chia seemed to have realized something and his gaze gradually became grave. Could it be that what? As long as there is a sound nearby, its speed will be augmented? Or rather, the louder the sounds around it, the faster its speed. Lin Chia frowned. If that's the case, then this mystery is a bit too dangerous. Casually thrown into a corner of a modern city, it would possess an extremely terrifying killing power. Nightclub killer, KTV maniac? Is what this means. Lin Chia continued. If that's the case, then its weakness is also very obvious. As long as it uses some sort of forbidden object or deliberately lowers the sound of its actions, even if it's in the pool realm, it might be able to kill it. In short, if my guess is correct, this is a mysterious that is ridiculously strong when it says it's strong and pathetically weak when it says it's weak. If that's the case, why didn't we just kill it straight away? Because it's only now that I thought of that possibility. Lin Chia shrugged. I'm not a god, how could I think of so much in such a short period of time? Then we now take your time to find it. If my reasoning is correct, that mystery can't still possess space-type powers, which means that a second Chuan realm mystery still exists here. Good. Outside the third building, Chubby Bailey hurried to the door, breathing heavily, and reached out to knock on the glass door. Crooked? Someone. He waited for half a day at the door, but there was still no movement at all, so he clenched his teeth, reached out and started to push the door, but no matter how much he pushed, he couldn't push it. Bailey Fatty retreated 2 steps, took out a piece of chalk from his pocket and grunted. With this little tactic, you still want to stop little master me? He reached out and held the chalk, drew a not too small circle on the glass door. When the powder was connected head to tail, the center of the glass door suddenly swirled. The glass in the center of the circle had disappeared. Bailey Chubby drilled through the circle and easily entered the middle of the 3 buildings. Molly. Little master, I've come to save you. Chubby Bailey swore and opened his mouth, and just after taking a step forward, the space around him opened up in a wrong way. In Bailey Chubby's dismayed eyes, his surroundings quickly changed. The staircase in front of him disappeared, and was replaced by a plain miscellaneous room. What the hell? Inception space. Chubby Bailey muttered a sentence, looked around and chose a direction to walk forward. Continuously through a few dormitories and a few corridors, Bailey Chubby was completely lost in this disorganized spatial labyrinth. It is reasonable to say that the area of this building is not large, but it is as if how to walk cannot go to the head generally. Bailey Chubby scratched his head after hesitating for a moment, took a deep breath and shouted. Molly. 7 Knights. Chao Yuan. Where are you guys? Bailey Chubby's voice echoed in the convoluted room, and he sighed helplessly as he listened to his echo getting smaller and smaller. Sub, 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 sub. Just then, the vague sound of dragging came from the distance. Bailey Chubby turned his head to look in the direction where the sound came from, and let out a light eep. The sound of dragging and pulling in the distance was getting closer and closer, and there was also a burst of sound of doors opening and closing. Not quite right. Bailey Chubby muttered. After hesitating for a moment, he pulled out the One Transformation 3000 sword from his pocket, gripping it tightly in his hand, and in passing he put the eyes of true vision on the bridge of his nose. The sound of dragging is getting closer and closer. It seems to be only one room away from him. Bailey Chubby stood there vigilantly, his brows slightly wrinkled. Right at this moment, two figures suddenly penetrated out from the other side of the wall, and one of them violently yanked on Chubby Bailey's wrist. Bailey Chubby was about to scream out when a hand flew and covered his mouth. "Don't talk, follow me." Molly looked behind the door vigilantly and lowered her voice. Chapter 165. Pattern. When Bailey Pang Pang saw it was Molly, his eyes immediately lit up and he nodded repeatedly. Another female soldier held Molly's hand and Molly held Bailey Pong Pong's. The three silently retreated towards the wall. A ripple spread across the surface and their figures disappeared into it. Passing through the wall, Bailey Pang Pang arrived on the balcony of a dormitory. He was about to say something, but Molly still tightly covered his mouth, shaking her head at him. Thud, thud, thud. On the other side of the wall, heavy footsteps and the sound of dragging something heavy grew closer. It stopped in front of the wall where the three were hiding, seeming to sense something. Bailey Pang Pang seemed to realize something, held his breath and stood motionless. Molly and the other female soldier did the same. Moments later the sound resumed, slowly moving away. Only after confirming it had gone far did Molly slowly remove her hand from Bailey Pong Pong's mouth. He blinked, seeming a bit regretful and reminiscent. "You yelled so loudly, did you want to die?" Molly looked at Bailey Pang Pang, recalling his foolish behavior of shouting at the top of his lungs earlier, and scolded in a low voice. Bailey Pang Pang responded pitifully, "How was I supposed to know we couldn't make noise? By the way, what exactly was that thing?" "A mystery, Tuan Borders mystery." Molly's expression grew serious. "We call it the Sound Hunter." Sound Hunter. It hunts sound sources, automatically tracing the origin of sounds. The louder the surrounding noise, the stronger it becomes. "You know so much about it?" Molly glanced at him and after a moment of silence slowly said, "This intelligence was obtained at the cost of more than a dozen sisters' lives." Bailey Pang Pang was stunned. "We don't know when this mystery appeared. Most of us were still asleep then. Later, someone first discovered its existence and screamed, instantly being cut in half by the Sound Hunter. But that scream woke up others and then everyone discovered this mystery. At that time we hadn't figured out its pattern and rushed in. It wasn't until more than a dozen sisters died in battle that we understood its killing mechanism. Fortunately, there was a girl called Zhang Xiaoxiao. Her forbidden domain could link multiple people's thoughts for mental communication. So we quickly quieted down and used thought communication. It was then that we discovered the quieter the sound, the weaker it became. Just as we were about to try to kill it using sound, the surrounding space began to distort, forcibly separating us. Bailey Pong Pong's face turned pale. "You mean, more than a dozen new recruits really died? But wasn't this supposed to be an exercise?" "Exercise?" Molly sneered. "When you witness that mystery killing with your own eyes, when you see familiar comrades cut in half, would you still think this is an exercise? What kind of exercise would cost more than a dozen lives?" Molly's eyes flashed with incredible killing intent. "I must kill that mystery with my own hands." Bailey Pang Pang was silent for a moment, then asked, "So what do we do now?" "Follow me." Molly grabbed Bailey Pong Pong's wrist again, nodded to the female soldier beside her. The soldier led them through more than 10 walls consecutively, finally arriving at the boiler room. This should be the largest room in the entire Building 3, originally on the far right of the first floor, used for new recruits to get hot water. It was about the size of 3 rooms combined. Now in this vast space, dozens of female soldiers were sitting on the ground, divided into 3 groups. Every few people held a drawing board, seeming to record something. Everyone maintained silence, moving gently, seemingly able to communicate just with eye contact. Bailey Pang Pang was stunned seeing such a peculiar scene. Molly made a hand gesture to one of the girls, and the next moment, a faint light emitted from that girl's fingertips. Then a cacophony of voices sounded in by Li Pengpeng's mind, as if headphones were directly placed in his brain, the sounds incredibly clear. No, no, Sister Molly said during her last reconnaissance that next to room 46 isn't a dormitory, but a corridor rotated 90 degrees. Sister Ling, the room distribution map for Area 5 is almost done. See if you can connect it with Area 4. Let me see the overall map from 10 minutes ago. I think I understand something. Yes. This is a 90-degree rotation. The original cross-section there was rotated 270 degrees, so it's inverted. Although none of the people present made a sound, Li Pengpeng could clearly hear their discussions. It was a very strange feeling. This is Zhang Xiaoxiao's mental link. It allows direct thought communication, but the forbidden domain's range isn't large, only covering about 2 rooms around. Molly's voice sounded in by Li Pengpeng's mind. What are they doing? Drawing the real-time spatial distribution map of Building 3. Molly's gaze fell on the busy crowd. The mystery controlling space and the Sound Hunter have teamed up. We've tried to kill the Sound Hunter several times before, but every time we were about to succeed, the space would be directly scrambled. So we're trying to find the pattern between each spatial distortion. Xiao Ling's forbidden domain allows her to walk ignoring terrain, so she and I act as scouts, moving through all the rooms then coming back to tell them the room numbers in order. They're responsible for drawing, collecting, and summarizing. Li Pengpeng's eyes widened. That's so intense. How did you come up with this? Everyone has their strengths. Among us female soldiers, there are also strategists like Lin Chia. Molly's gaze turned to a girl sitting in the center of the crowd, pondering over several maps in front of her. Pride flashed in Molly's eyes. Thanks to Aziz's constant guidance, she was the first to discover the Sound Hunter's killing mechanism. She also found this place and proposed finding the pattern of spatial changes. It's just that while Lin Chia excels at both deduction and combat, Aziz can't fight. She's only suited to be a pure strategist. So, have you found it? Li Pengpeng asked curiously. Aziz says we're close. In the crowd, Aziz sat amidst dense papers, holding 2 distribution maps from different time periods, comparing them. The light in her eyes grew brighter. Suddenly, as if realizing something, she abruptly sat up. I've got it. Aziz tightly gripped the papers in her hand, her eyes full of excitement. I know the pattern of each spatial distortion. Chapter 166. Sudden Attack. Crack, crack, crack. The familiar sound rang out, and Lin Chia and Chao Yuan simultaneously stopped in their tracks. The rooms above, below, left, right, front, and back rapidly shifted, finally settling at a certain point. It was another spatial distortion, and the surrounding environment changed once again. Lin Chia, who had been sensing the surroundings with his eyes closed, slowly opened them. Horizontal 19, 27, 33, 20, 17. Vertical 0409 37 18 23. Lin Chia sat on the ground, his brows furrowed, constantly muttering to himself. His fingers lightly traced patterns on the tiles as if calculating something or perhaps drawing something. Meanwhile, Chao Yuan could only sit on a chair hugging his sword, watching Lin Chia mutter incomprehensibly, feeling like a complete idiot. After about 2 minutes of muttering, Lin Chia let out a long sigh and slowly stood up from the ground. How is it? Chao Yuan couldn't help but ask. My spiritual power can only cover a range of about 100 meters. During the spatial distortions I can't monitor all the changes, but I did notice some clues. Lin Chia pondered for a moment, his hands gesturing in the air. The spatial distortion seems complex, but there are actually only 2 basic types of changes: horizontal cross-section rotation and vertical cross-section rotation. Each rotation must be an integer multiple of right angles, and which cross-section starts rotating is not fixed. Although only one cross-section can rotate at a time, the rotation speed is extremely fast, creating the illusion of spatial chaos. Chao Yuan listened with a growing headache. So, have you predicted the pattern of spatial changes? No, the information I have is still too fragmented, and I haven't observed enough instances. Lin Chia shook his head, pondered for a moment, and then said somewhat uncertainly, but I feel like this pattern of changes is somehow familiar. Just as Lin Chia was thinking, the familiar dragging sound came from afar once again. Both of their expressions tensed, and they exchanged a glance, silently placing their hands on their sword hilts. Lin Chia had said earlier that once they understood the mechanism of this mysterious killer, it wouldn't be difficult to eliminate this mystery with their combat abilities. They had been wandering in this chaotic space to grasp the pattern of changes, and if they encountered the mystery again, eliminating it directly wouldn't be a bad idea. An intense darkness spread out from Lin Chia as its center. The thermos, teacups, coat racks and other items in the dormitory gradually floated up, hovering around him. Lin Chia gave Chao Yuan a look, and the latter immediately understood, slowly walking towards the door behind them. The dormitory space was too cramped. Fighting the headless man here would leave too little room for evasion, which would be very disadvantageous for them. They needed to change locations. Creak. Lin Chia had tried to open the door as gently as possible, but this door seemed to have some issues to begin with and made a slight noise. Under normal circumstances this wouldn't have been a problem, but in this situation, the sound was unusually conspicuous. Lin Chia's pupils contracted slightly and without thinking he quickly retreated. Chao Yuan did the same. The next moment, a huge black shadow flew across 2 rooms. The blade of the beheading sword flashed, and the door that had made the noise was instantly cut in half. In the darkest mystic realm, Lin Chia's movements were as silent as a ghost, making no sound at all. Chao Yuan had long since taken off his shoes to avoid making footsteps and had been walking barefoot until now, landing almost silently. Now Lin Chia and Chao Yuan were in a long corridor. Although it didn't appear to be on one level, the space was much larger than the dormitory. After cutting through the door, the headless man stood still for a while, then slowly moved forward, dragging the large beheading sword behind him. He hadn't discovered the presence of the two. Lin Chia gave Chao Yuan a look, and the latter nodded, leaning against the left side of the wall, regulating his heartbeat through breathing to minimize any sound. Lin Chia leaned on the other side like a dark specter without any trace of energy. Thud, thud, thud. The headless man's massive body almost occupied the entire corridor. He dragged the beheading sword behind him, moving forward step by step. Fortunately, both Lin Chia and Chao Yuan were not fat, so by leaning against the sides of the corridor, they could perfectly avoid his path. If it were a certain fat person here, the headless man might bump into his belly and then confusedly swing his sword. The headless man slowly moved forward. Just as he was about to pass by Lin Chia and Chao Yuan, Lin Chia's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and his hand on the sword hilt suddenly exerted force. Clang! 2 swords were drawn in an instant. At the same time, Chao Yuan on the other side suddenly gripped the hilt of the sword in his arms. Black, resentful flame burst out from the scabbard, following the blade as it was drawn, slashing out in an instant. 3 swords, 1 aimed at the headless man's sword-wielding hand, 2 at his chest. The moment the slight sound of the swords being drawn was heard, the headless man seemed to come alive, swinging the beheading sword in his hand at an extremely fast speed. Clang! A loud collision rang out as the beheading sword clashed with Chao Yuan's black flame straight sword. Originally, the strength of the berserk Chao Yuan was greater than that of the current headless man, but at the moment of collision the headless man's strength multiplied several times. With one strike he sent the berserk Chao Yuan, sword and all, crashing into the side wall. Boom! The berserk Chao Yuan's body was forcefully smashed through a wall, crashing into a dormitory room, raising clouds of dust. In this split second, Lin Chia's 2 swords had already pierced the headless man's chest. The blade of the straight sword pierced into the solid muscle. Just as it was about to pierce the heart, at the moment when the huge crash of the berserk Chao Yuan smashing through the wall sounded, the headless man's body instantly hardened several times over. His muscles, as hard as rock, firmly gripped Lin Chia's swords, not allowing them to advance even a bit. Lin Chia's pupils suddenly contracted. According to the original plan, their sneak attack should have been able to kill, or at least severely wound the headless man. But he never imagined that although this headless man had no brain, his wisdom was not low. He knew how to create sounds in a silent environment to enhance his various attributes. If not for the huge crash of Chao Yuan being smashed through the wall just now, the headless man would already be a corpse. Is this the mystery of the Chuan realm? Even after completely figuring out its mechanism, successfully killing it is still incredibly difficult. Lin Chia decisively let go of the sword hilts, leaving the two straight swords stuck in its chest. His form, like a leaf in the wind, swiftly drifted backwards. At the same time, the headless man's second strike swung out like lightning. The edge of the beheading sword grazed past Lin Chia's forehead. Chapter 167, A Misplaced Rubik's Cube. If it wasn't for Lin Chia's extremely fast reaction speed and movements, the headless man's knife would have been enough to kill him. Lin Chia stretched out his finger and gently hooked it, and the two straight knives stuck in the headless man's chest trembled violently and flew out upside down, and even though the knives had already left hideous wounds on its body, there still wasn't the slightest bit of blood splattered out, as if it didn't exist in the first place as such a thing as blood. The two straight knives flew back into Lin Chia's hand, and he lightly landed on the ground without making the slightest sound. Dang dash. At the same time, the baleful black flames on crazy demon Chao Yuan, who had been hammered into another room, skyrocketed, and his entire body flew out like an arrow, laughing as he swung his sword at the headless man. After crazy demon Chao Yuan created a louder sound source, the headless man immediately gave up his search for Lin Chia and swung his sword at Chao Yuan instead, the huge decapitating sword colliding with the black inflammation straight sword once again. Mad demon Chao Yuan once again flew backwards and smashed through another wall. Cluck 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 cluck. Mad demon Chao Yuan was like a tireless beast, being sent flying over and over again, yet always able to grin and strike his blade again. The headless man was indeed able to kill the other recruits with a single slash, but when faced with the Black King chopping and extinguishing a super high danger that was clearly over the top, it was surprising that it couldn't do anything with him for a while. No, it should be said that in the case of not taking the initiative to create a big commotion, it would only be pressed by the crazy demon Chao Yuan and rubbed on the ground. But alas, every time the two of them sparred with their swords, every time they sent Chao Yuan flying, the loud noise created would increase the headless man's fighting strength for a short period of time, and in turn he would violently beat up crazy demon Chao Yuan. Only it would take some time before he wanted to take his life. After all, Chao Yuan's vitality in this state was even more perverted than Shao Chong. Lin Chia stood by the side like a ghost, silently watching mad demon Chao Yuan being pressed to the ground and blast hammered by the headless man. His heart sighed helplessly. But if the current Chao Yuan still had some sanity, stopped giggling and eased up his movements, the headless man would have long been finished off by him. Unfortunately, he suddenly felt that letting Chao Yuan make a move at that time was a huge mistake. Cluck cluck cluck. The two of them didn't know how many rooms they had fought through before crazy demon Chao Yuan once again climbed up from the rubble, shakily gripping the straight blade in his hand tightly as he laughed and swung the blade towards the headless man. Lin Chia quietly followed the two, trying to find a suitable opportunity to strike and kill the headless man in one fell swoop, but didn't dare to get too close, or else he would be caught up in the fight by Chao Yuan, who couldn't distinguish between his enemy and himself. Right at this moment the room around them moved again without warning. It had begun to change again. Lin Chia was startled, and his figure quickly rushed towards the room where the two were mixing it up. The moment he was about to step into it, the room in front of him suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a series of changing different rooms. By the time the surroundings stabilized, Lin Chia's spiritual perception had completely failed to capture the two men's traces. The second mystery hidden in the building. Doesn't he want me to intervene in their fight? Lin Chia quickly understood the reason for this misstep and his brows tightened. Without him waiting on the sidelines, mad demon Chao Yuan's chances of winning the battle against the headless man alone instantly became slim. Chao Yuan's mental power was not enough to support him to maintain his madness for too long, while the headless man could always use the sounds of the battle to enhance himself, and if he consumed any more, Chao Yuan would inevitably fall into a disadvantage. It seems that the second mystery hidden in the dark, its intelligence isn't low either. Lin Chia only hesitated for a moment before stepping away and flying through the other rooms, his mental power covering every room around him in an attempt to once again find the duo in the melee. Since the headless man had already been restrained by Chao Yuan, there was no need for him to be gentle anymore, so he simply let go of his speed and ran with all his might. And if it wasn't for the fact that he didn't have the ability to do large-scale destruction, he would have already begun to demolish the building by now. Lin Chia's figure drifted through room after room, and suddenly he came to a violent stop. His spiritual perception, in addition to the seemingly endless rooms, something different appeared. He turned his head to the wall to his right, and it was as if his gaze could pass through it and see the bizarre spherical hollow 2 rooms away. That's right, beyond the 2 rooms, there is no longer any other room, but a spherical cavity similar to a fruit kernel, wrapped in the center by layers of rooms. In this cavity, there was a silver-colored third-order magic cube silently suspended, emitting a bizarre light. Lin Chia's eyes narrowed slightly. The appearance of a levitated Rubik's Cube in the center of this chaotic space was not normal by any stretch of the imagination, so if he was right, it was hidden in one of these 3 buildings, the second Chuan Realm mystery. However, the appearance of this mystery is Lin Chia never expected. So far he has contacted the mystery are living creatures, never appeared the shape of the object, and the shape also belongs to the recent generation. Could it be some sort of forbidden object rather than a mystery? This thought had just risen in Lin Chia's mind before it was dispelled by him. His spiritual power could clearly perceive that there was a fluctuation of life within this Rubik's Cube. And if it really was a forbidden object, how could it possess such a high level of intelligence? The Rubik's Cube turned out to be so. Lin Chia seemed to be understanding something and his eyes gradually brightened up. He had already figured out the law of the 3 buildings' spatial misalignment. Magic Cube? Bailey Chubby's eyes were filled with surprise when he heard Aziz's thought transmission. That's right, the law of misalignment of all the rooms in this building is based on the magic cube. Aziz spoke with certainty. If each room is seen as a small square on the Rubik's Cube, then the whole 3 buildings, in fact, is a Rubik's Cube with an irregular shape of the nth order. The exact number of orders, which is changing every time, should be based on that mysterious change of will. Every time the space is disorganized, in fact, can be regarded as an n-order Rubik's Cube is rapidly disorganized, and the location of its small cubes will also be changed at high speed, so it creates this kind of untraceable illusion. But in fact, as long as we grasp the direction and angle of every rotation of the Rubik's Cube, we can make a prediction about it. In other words, this entire space of ours had become a Rubik's Cube, and that mystery the person playing the Rubik's Cube. I summarized the first 32 misplaced drawings and summarized the pattern of each time it disrupted the Rubik's Cube, which means that from the next time onwards, I will be able to predict the trajectory of the changes. Hearing Aziz's words, the people in the room got excited. They had been here for so long painstakingly analyzing and drawing, just waiting for Aziz's words. Not only that, Aziz's voice sounded again. I already know where that mysterious hideout is. Chapter 168, General. So we need to make a choice now. Aziz slowly stood up with a very serious expression. Whether to go and kill that misplaced space mystery first or to kill that sound hunter. The number of female soldiers who were here right now wasn't that many, and there was a part like Aziz that wasn't good at fighting at all, so splitting the army in 2 directions was impossible, and they could only hit them one by one. In that case, the order was very important. Of course it's to kill that sound hunters first. An angry voice rang out. That's right. He killed little sister Ya. I want to avenge her. Kill the sound hunter. It killed so many sisters. Must die. Right. Kill it. The voices of the female soldiers rang out one after another. Their opinions were highly united, and a high level of wariness filled everyone's eyes. Although they looked soft and thin, the bloodlust in their hearts was no less than anyone else. They too were vigilantes. Good. Aziz nodded, looking down at the newly drawn drawing in his hands, taking a pen and calculating rapidly. I'll do the next 2 misalignment simulations in advance first, to prevent the second mystery from manipulating space again to let that sound hunter escape. When the next misalignment starts, it will be our chance to hunt down sound hunter. Lin Chia pondered for a moment and didn't rush through those 2 rooms to kill the tesseract in the hollow, but instead sat down in place and used a touch of darkness from his fingertips to write and draw something on the white wall. Although the distance between him and the tesseract appeared to be very close, there was actually no direct passageway in the middle, but rather 4 consecutive walls, and the tesseract's intelligence was even higher than he had imagined, and it had managed to block off all of the several sides that were close to it with walls by utilizing the rotating rooms of the room. This meant that in order to reach the void he had to break through these 4 walls one after the other. Although this wasn't difficult for Lin Chia, the point was that during the time he was breaking through the walls, the demon cube would inevitably notice his intentions, realize that its position was exposed, and disrupt the space once again. By then Lin Chia wouldn't know which nook or cranny he would be turned to. If only there were forbidden ruins that could penetrate walls. Lin Chia sighed. Right now he could only rely on his own wits to come up with a way to be able to break through the blockade and reach the hollow. At this moment he finally understood the instructor's intentions for setting up these mysteries. The weird spider outside the 3 buildings was a test of force and spirit. The headless man chopping people with a decapitating sword was a test of observation and heart. The Rubik's Cube in front of us is a test of wisdom. The spider wandering around the campus can theoretically be killed if you have enough strength. But the situation in the 3 buildings is different. Want to kill the headless man, you have to overcome the fear of being cut off at the waist, and from the sacrifice to observe the mechanism of its killing. Whereas if you want to kill Tesseract, you have to gain insight into the functioning of the entire 3 buildings. In a sense, the difficulty of killing Tesseract was the highest. After a long time, until the entire wall was almost filled with Lin Chia's writing, he finally took a long breath and took 2 steps backward, a faint golden color emerging in his eyes. Success or failure, this was the moment. His body slightly bowed down and the supreme darkness divine ruin spread extremely fast until it completely covered the surrounding 30 meters. He didn't dare to directly open the divine ruin to 50 meters because if he did that he would inevitably envelop the magic cube in it and instead he would startle the snakes. 30 meters, just enough to cover the 4 walls in front of him. His aim was just to enter that hollow in the shortest possible time. As long as he entered the hollow, the magic cube wouldn't be able to move it away through spatial misalignment. Lin Chia took a deep breath and his entire body shot out like an arrow. At the same time, his gaze slightly condensed as the center of the 4 walls within the range of the darkness god ruins simultaneously broke open with a hideous crack, as if a large, invisible hand had hardened and ripped them apart. Immediately afterward, Lin Chia's figure swung in front of the first wall. The dual swords were sheathed. The 2 straight swords easily chopped through the crack-covered first wall, and without the slightest pause in his steps, Lin Chia rushed straight towards the second wall. 2 slashes were swung out one after another, and the second and third walls burst open in response. This process seemed slow, but in reality, it was only a second from the time Lin Chia struck. Right at the moment Lin Chia was about to touch the last wall, the magic cube finally reacted, and the third-order silver magic cube instantly changed into an irregular shape of more than 40 orders before twisting at a rapid speed. Lin Chia's eyes suddenly contracted, and instead of chopping the last wall he stomped hard on a cabinet on one side, and his entire body flew backward in the direction he originally rushed from. When he managed to retreat back to the previous room his surroundings changed extremely quickly, and the room that was originally closest to the hollow was rotated to the corner of the very edge. And this room that Lin Chia was in after rotating in turns also gradually came to a halt. A smile appeared at the corner of Lin Chia's mouth. He looked sideways at the wall to his right and slowly stepped forward, slashing 2 straight swords in quick succession, breaking open a large hole in this wall. Behind the wall was a spherical hollow with a radius of more than 3 meters. In the center of the hollow, a silver-colored Rubik's Cube was silently suspended, and the surrounding dazzling light seemed to be much dimmer than just now. Sure enough, you can't disrupt space twice in a row. Lin Chia looked at the silver magic cube in front of him and spoke calmly. From the beginning he hadn't planned to break through the 4 walls and enter the void in one go. That would be too risky to race against time, so he directly bet all his weights on the second spatial disruption. Through the rotational trajectory of the Rubik's Cube that he had previously mastered, he calculated in advance the room that was closest to the Rubik's Cube body after the next disruption, which was the penultimate room. The reason Lin Chia put up a momentum was to scare this highly intelligent Rubik's Cube and force it to perform a second spatial disruption so that it wouldn't be able to disrupt the space again in a short period of time, whereas at this moment Lin Chia had already arrived in front of it. If we use the term chess it would be checkmate. Lin Chia muttered, holding 2 straight blades in his hands as he leapt up towards the hollow in front of him. At the same time the hot water room. The space was once again disrupted, and the layout of the room around them rapidly changed as all the girls brightened up before their eyes and violently stood up from the ground. The time has come. Molly slowly clenched her fists, and the air near her fists seemed to be distorted by the vibrations. Their eyes burned with an exuberant battle intent. Operation Hunt, Sound Hunter, begin. Chapter 169 Kill in Hunting. In the disorganized room, Three groups of female soldiers divided into three directions, flying towards a certain path to search up. Bailey Chubby followed Molly's group, and after continuously passing through a few dormitories, she lowered her voice and asked suspiciously, "Why are we splitting up? Aren't we going to hunt, sound hunters? Originally the number is not much, this time to separate people is not too good?" Molly said in a bad mood. "Dozens of people walking together, is the sound they make not loud enough? And split the road does not mean that one by one to go up to send. Now we can grasp the law of spatial disarray, but the specific location of that sound hunter is not clear. Split the road march as long as there is a group of people to detect the location of that sound hunter. Then the other two groups will be able to immediately outflank the past. If you can't understand such a simple reasoning, what are you rich sons loaded with in your heads?" Bailey Fatty pondered for a moment. "All you?" Molly forcibly pressed down the impulse to slap this fat man, took a deep breath and marched forward silently and quickly. Suddenly, a girl walking in the forefront stopped, and the crowd stopped with bated breath and looked around vigilantly. "Did you guys hear anything?" The girl frowned and asked. "What sound?" Bailey Chubby listened carefully for a while and still didn't hear anything. "The sound of fighting." A touch of doubt surfaced in Molly's eyes. "Strange, it is reasonable to say that the other two groups will not fight with its sound hunters. How can there be the sound of battle? Moreover, the sound seems to be getting closer to us." The expression of S18, who was surrounded in the center, gradually became grave, getting ready for battle. The crowd took a deep breath and minimized the sound they were making while gripping the weapons in their hands, but they were trapped in the third building from the start, and there was no way for them to go to the warehouse to get real weapons, so what they had in their hands were mostly fruit knives, iron pipes removed from the hot water room and so on, and at first glance they looked like a group of punks about to get into a group fight. The sound is getting closer and closer. Even Bailey Fat can clearly hear the sound of a wall breaking, and the clanging sound of golden iron, which seems to be mixed with a weird laughter. Bailey Chubby froze. He always felt this laughter he seemed to have heard somewhere. Thunk. One side of the wall in front of the crowd burst open. A figure covered in black flames flew out backwards, crashed heavily on the other side of the wall. Drops of blood slipped from the corner of his mouth and fell to the ground. He struggled to stand up. The flames around his body weakly throbbed and seemed to be extinguished at any time. The figure had just stabilized his body when another huge figure arrived in front of him lightning fast, and the exaggerated large sword swung out once again, cutting straight to the waist. Clang dash. The black flame's straight blade collided with the decapitating greatsword with a loud bang, followed by Crazy Demon Chow Yuan's body being knocked through the wall once again, crashing into another room. The headless man's figure shifted and once again followed him in. From the beginning to the end, the headless man did not even notice the existence of the dozen or so people on the side, as if the black enemy in front of him had already attracted all of its attention. The people who saw the entire process with their own eyes had their mouths wide open, their eyes filled with disbelief. Crap, isn't that Chow Yuan? Bailey Chubby's eyes widened. He fought the Sound Hunter one-on-one with that much commotion, and he actually hasn't been wasted yet? S18 was also really shocked when he saw this scene, and looking at the situation it seemed like they had been fighting for a long time. This was too raw. It's worthy of being a man who can press the instructor into a fight. What do we do now? S18 pondered for a moment and softly went after them, at the same time informing the other two groups to gather here as well. Having someone who can fight head-on with its sound hunters to draw fire for us is a great advantage for us. Good. The crowd followed the footsteps of the two monsters. Only Bailey Chubby walked at the very back, looked around for a while and scratched his head in confusion. Strange, Chow Yuan are here. Where did the 7 knights go? After looking for a long time he didn't see Lin Chia's figure and could only shake his head and follow the crowd forward. Crazy Demon Chow Yuan and the headless man fought through 2 more dorm rooms. Of course, when they said they fought through, it was actually just Chow Yuan being beaten one-sidedly. Just as Lin Chia expected, Chow Yuan's mental power wasn't enough to support his insane state for too long, and now his fighting strength had dropped a lot from the beginning. Before he was still able to fight a few hard slashes with the headless man, but now he was basically hacked away with a single slash, and if it wasn't for his extreme speed and survival ability he would have been cut down at the waist by now. However, within a few short minutes, almost all the female soldiers had ambushed the two, and there were even some others who had previously come in with Lin Chia and got lost in the 3 buildings, who were pulled into the team after being discovered by the female soldiers, adding up to roughly 70 or so people. Zhang Xiao's mental network once again connected everyone, and in this idea platform that was more convenient than a radio, Azaiza quickly laid out the battle plan. Crazy demon Chao Yuan was sent flying by the headless man's blow. His body was covered in injuries as his figure lay among the ruins. The fury around his body gradually faded away, his hands struggled to hold on to the ground, seemingly still wanting to stand up, but this time, it seemed like he couldn't do it. In the short silence, the headless man dragged his decapitated large sword, and walked towards Chao Yuan step by step. Do it. Azaiza's voice resounded in everyone's minds. In the next moment, dozens of figures flashed out from the rooms on both sides one after another, and distinct forbidden ruins unfolded at the same time. The decapitation blade in the headless man's hand gently shook, and surprisingly began to float upwards at the same time. The dragging subtle sound came to an abrupt end, the headless man's figure lurched, and his speed slowed down again by a lot, as if someone pressed the slow play button, and it was a full 10 seconds before he was able to take a step forward. Sure enough, Azaiza's eyes lit up. Since the sound hunter feeds on sound, then it is holding that heavy large knife, not only for the purpose of waist decapitation, but also for the purpose of using the dragging sound at all times to enhance itself. As long as the decapitation knife is propped up off the ground, and the sound is controlled to a certain number of decibels or less, it is as easy as a slap in the face to kill it. Immediately after, other people's silhouettes quietly drifted toward the headless man. Their respective killing moves pinched in the hands of the eyes. Killing intent rushed skyward. Just at this moment the surrounding room's slightly vibration even began to disorganize again. The hearts of the crowd thumped. As the surrounding room moved at a rapid pace, Azaiza's eyes flashed with thick consternation, because she realized that this time, the spatial misalignment was completely different from the previous pattern. That is to say, her foreknowledge was wrong. With the gradual stabilization of the surrounding rooms, the crowd realized that this time the space was not misaligned but restored to its original state. The familiar dormitory, the continuous corridor, the brilliant sunshine outside the corridor. The original disorganization as if it was just an illusion. 3 buildings restored the original appearance. Chapter 170. Help. 3 buildings. Rooftop. Lin Chia half crouched on the ground in the center of the rooftop. The straight swords in both hands had already returned to their sheaths, and in front of him were silver debris all over the ground. Killing a Chuan realm mystery can be really not easy, even if it doesn't have an attack power. Lin Chia took a long breath and muttered. After he jumped into the hollow, the Rubik's Cube surprisingly forcefully disorganized the space, but this time the disorganization wasn't as large as the entire 3rd building. Instead, it merely disorganized the space between Lin Chia and it. The result of doing so was that Lin Chia had been jumping in midair properly, and then he was spinning madly around its magic cube, as if he had been thrown into a washing machine, almost vomiting out his bile. Fortunately, at such a short distance, Lin Chia once again unfolded the darkness divine ruin, incorporating the magic cube into it, and at the cost of having his spiritual power backfired, he forcibly eroded the magic cube with darkness. Then, seizing the brief opportunity, he endured the pain and used the 2 knives to hack the magic cube into a ground full of debris. The Chuan realm mystic's spiritual power proved to be much stronger than Lin Chia's, and under the backlash, now Lin Chia only felt as if his head was stuffed with paste, and his entire being was muddled. He slowly sat on the ground, his hands gently rubbing his temples. After killing the devil's cube, he clearly felt a hot current surging into his body, the same as when he killed the Nandu snake demon at that time. Not surprisingly, its soul was also detained by the mental hospital. But what could a tesseract do when it went to work as an escort? Use it as a toy for Mei Lin? Lin Chia put aside these mixed thoughts for the time being, and was about to empty his mind and enter a meditative state to recover his mental strength, when he suddenly seemed to think of something and slowly climbed up from the ground, carefully picking up the pieces of the Rubik's Cube that had spilled out onto the ground. These might be important summoning materials, they can't be wasted just like that. After doing all this, Lin Chia finally put his heart down and entered a meditative state. 3rd building, 4th floor. Recovered? What? Azaiza stared at the scene in front of her in a daze, only reacting after a long time that someone had killed the second mysterious that controlled space. All of them were here to surround that sound hunter. So who went and killed that second mystery? One must know that in order to kill that one mystery, one must first penetrate the laws of misalignment. This is not something that anyone can do. The moment he heard these words, for some reason, Bailey Chubby's mind conjured up Lin Chia's figure. Other than him, it seemed like no one else could do this, right? Even though their hearts were full of questions, the current situation didn't allow them to think too much about it, and the sudden recovery of the misplaced space broke their original plan, moving almost half of them elsewhere. Fortunately, those who were truly important to the hunting plan were still present, and with a few minor adjustments, it could still continue. Keep control of its knives. The control squad is ready to hold its movements. The must-kill squad will listen to my command, approach it a little bit closer and strike at the same time on my command. Make sure you get a kill. If it fails to kill, the containment squad will strike in time. Aziz's eyes slowly narrowed, his voice echoing in everyone's mind. Listen to my command. 3, 2, 1. Move your hands. In an instant, a dozen piercing rays of light erupted at the same time, swarming towards the headless man in a stagnant state. The fronts were revealed. The intensive training camp outside a certain warehouse. A group of men dressed as recruits quietly approached the periphery of the warehouse, forming an encircling circle that gradually closed in on the center, encircling the entire warehouse. Shin Qingzhu stood in front of the main door of the warehouse, squinting at the warehouse in front of him, his fingertips gently rubbing two rings. One is the ignition ring that is used to detonate the air, and the other is the soul-severing knife, left behind by Bailey Chubby. Is it hiding here? Shin Qingzhu faintly spoke. Brother Shin, what to do next? Charge straight in and hack it to death? Deng Wei stood behind him and asked with some nervousness and some anticipation. Shin Qingzhu glared at him. Rushing, just no rushing. Can you have some brains? What's hiding in here isn't some cat or dog, it's the vicious Chuan realm mystery. His soul has been seduced by others, can't he grow up a bit? Ting Wei scratched his head in aggravation and let out a cry. Shin Qingzhu sighed with hatred, took out the walkie-talkie, pressed the button and opened his mouth. Xingzhong, are the bombs all pressed? At this moment the Special Forces soldier Xingzhong, who had just jumped down from the eastern outer wall of the warehouse, took 2 steps backward, once again examined the directional blasting bombs densely spread on the 4 walls of the warehouse and nodded. The bombs have been planted according to this amount, although it may not be able to kill a Chuan realm, but it will definitely hurt it. Shin Qingzhu put down the walkie-talkie, took a deep breath and slowly said, Next you guys ambush outside the warehouse, I will go in alone. Go in alone. Li Jia stared wide-eyed. Shin brother, the mystery inside is the Chuan realm, you are alone. Nonsense, I want you to remind? Shin Qingzhu said in a bad mood, although that dead fat man said before that the spider is hiding here, but cannot rule out the possibility that it has left. I have to go in to confirm it, and by the way, feel its reality. I always feel that it suddenly escaped before. Strange. Moreover, the warehouse has been arranged around the bomb. If really fight, I will directly let you guys detonate the bomb. I can drain the air around myself. The flames of the explosion cannot hurt me. Splattered debris I can also rely on the wall of air to block down. All you guys have to do is wait for my signal, and after the bomb is detonated, surround the injured spiders according to the originally arranged plan. Deng Wei and the others glanced at each other and nodded helplessly. Shin Qingzhu's character, they couldn't be clearer. Once they recognized something, it would be hard to change. Shin Qingzhu took out a piece of gum from his pocket and threw it into his mouth, turned his neck and stepped forward, his eyes stern and deep. He put his hands on the door of the warehouse and pushed it with force. Creak dash. The heavy warehouse door was pushed open a crack, and Shin Qingzhu walked into it alone, with a very relaxed expression as if he had come for a picnic. This warehouse wasn't big, but it wasn't small either, about 3 basketball courts spliced together. The sunlight spilled in from the vents at the top of the warehouse, illuminating a dim corner. Dense cobwebs are almost all over the warehouse, intricate spider silk interlacing. A soft white silk bed suspended in mid-air. Above, a little boy hazily opened his eyes, wiped off the corner of the mouth, drooling, sleepy, looked down. A man and a spider just stared at each other. A few moments later, thrilling screams echoed in the wide warehouse. Help! Ah 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 ah.